Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 246 of your favourite Formula 1 show. Yes, Jamie and I return with a very rare Wednesday episode. Yes, these kind of episodes are only reserved for when we have some quite major breaking news coming to the F1 world. And this one is something we've never seen before in the sport because a Red Bull team principal has been sacked. Jamie183, what are your initial thoughts and feelings on this?
Yeah, it's a bit groundbreaking, isn't it? Because obviously they've been the Red Bull team since 2005, and Christian Horner was there, taken from Arden at the time.
Day one.
Yep. Yeah, literally, day zero. He transitioned it from Jaguar, didn't he? So
yes,
it really is. It really is a bit wild that 20 years down the line, and 8 drivers' championships, 7 constructors' championships. No,
6, I believe.
6.
Yeah.
And he's gone, and it was so sudden, kind of unexpected, or maybe the timing was unexpected, but the fact it's happened is maybe not unexpected. Yeah, I think there's a lot of play here, and it's at first I was like, well, that's clearly just a result of the allegations that have been going on 18 months about inappropriate conduct with a female employee. I think there's more to it than that. I think that's one of the factors, but I think there's a bit more going on here in the Red Bull world.
Yeah, it is fascinating. We're going to kind of talk through some of the theories and kind of little nuggets of information that we've been given so far regarding this. A fun little fact for you, Jamie. Andrea Stella, hired by McLaren to be team principal in December 2022, is now the second longest standing team principal in the sport.
Wow.
That's hilariously alarming.
We're getting as bad as football.
It's like 2.5 years now, and he's only behind Toto Wolff, who it was always kind of
2012,
2013, I believe, in the end. Like late 2013, he kind of transitioned into that TP role. But I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Because it was always kind of that Toto and Christian were used as against Ferrari. The fact that I believe the time that Christian Horner's been at Red Bull, Ferrari have had, I want to say, 8 team principals.
It was something like that. I saw an Autosport tweet about it.
Yes, yeah, and it's obviously, we always kind of use those two as the example as to why you didn't want to keep changing around your team principal. And now I guess we've only got Toto to use as that example.
Well, I guess Fred Vasseur must be about 3rd or 4th in that case.
He's not far behind, because obviously we had such a big shift around right at the back end of 2022, didn't we? Kind of 22 into 23 over that winter break, like Jos Capito and everybody else as well. It has really been an interesting mix-up. What we do know, though, of course, Laurent Mekies, he's going to be stepping in, obviously, from VCARB straight into that Red Bull role. We don't believe, as of yet, that it's like a permanent, kind of definite, forever kind of role. We believe this is a temporary kind of situation. And then Alan Permane, who used to work for Alpine and was rather unceremoniously sacked for reasons we still don't really know last year, because he'd been at Alpine for like 30 years. He will be stepping in as VCARB interim team principal as well. I mean, the first thing there, of course, is for Red Bull's sake, such a shame that Jonathan Wheatley left, obviously so recently, because he was kind of a likely and worthy successor.
I think I said this on the podcast not that long ago, that Jonathan Wheatley felt like the natural next Red Bull team principal after Christian Horner went, but obviously he went to go find another opportunity. He probably felt like, since there's been an internal and an external investigation into Horner that got thrown out, that he wasn't going to get a sacking anytime soon. So Jonathan Wheatley elected to move he and his whole family to Hinwil in Switzerland. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. He'll definitely lead that project into Audi many years to come, I think. But it's a big shame,
especially with the progress they've made this year.
Well, exactly. And the most recent podium finisher, of course, as I'm still very happy about. Got to mention that one. Nico Hülkenberg is a podium finisher in a Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton is not this season.
In 2025, yeah, I think that needs to be the caveat there.
But back to it, Laurent Mekies. That's the thing that is a bit surprising, is if this was performance related and, in football terms, someone loses a 6-pointer, they get sacked, then that's a panic move. If it was F1 performance related, I feel like they'd have had a successor ready, which the appointment of Laurent Mekies straight in feels a bit like a stopgap. And there's nothing against Laurent Mekies. I'm sure he's very capable, but he was clearly employed as Franz Tost replacement at VCARB, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri. That, like, it feels a bit odd that they've just shoved him in as a stopgap for Horner, which kind of makes me feel like there might be something more sinister going on in terms of the timing of it.
This does feel very sudden, doesn't it? I think, as we've kind of spoken about already, we can only obviously talk so much about whatever on earth's going on with Christian Horner's court proceedings or anything like that. My personal assumption is that something has kind of been decided regarding that, and it was very much a clear cut and dry. If this is decided upon this way, you're out the door immediately, and it was very much just kind of a straightforward, that's what this is. I mean, the other question as well that I've seen circling around, it's generally by Aston Martin spam annoying Twitter accounts, is that apparently he could be off to Aston Martin. I'm not going to directly ask you whether you think he's going there, but do you think we're going to see Christian Horner back in Formula 1? Like, is he going to be a team principal elsewhere? Because I personally think we're just not going to see him again in kind of this capacity.
I would be a little bit surprised, certainly anytime soon. And because it's been a sacking, the official term was he's been released of his duties.
Immediately.
With immediate effect.
Which is rare in of itself, to be honest.
Exactly. So there must be a healthy payoff. And, if Aston were after him, Red Bull would just hold on to him because he's under contract. Obviously, he's a CEO. Aston Martin would have had to part with a lot of cash to get Christian Horner out of that Red Bull family. So I don't think he'll go anywhere else. I think he'll probably end up being a pundit for Drive to Survive and possibly Sky Sports. Because the weird thing is the allegations were investigated internally and externally and didn't go anywhere. So unless there's been new allegations that we haven't heard of yet or something, bad has happened recently, then I don't think it's solely related to that. I think it's more related to the performance issues and the Verstappen-related politics with Jos and with Pierre Vacher and the power vacuum that's been there since COTA in 2023, really, with the death of Dietrich Mateschitz. So, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, this is the thing as well, isn't it, and this is something we spoke about last week as well. A lot of people have gone, well, surely this confirms that Max is going to Mercedes, and a lot of people have gone, has Christian Horner only been sacked to make sure that Max stays at Red Bull? Do you think that there is, potentially, is it, we've lost Max all of a sudden, it hasn't been announced yet or anything like that, but he's going, you're out the door, mate, that was your job number one, was to keep Max with this team.
I think
is it something like that?
It could be either way, and until someone gets a microphone into Max Verstappen's mouth, I don't think we're going to know.
In it, or near it.
Well, near enough. I think if Max comes out and says, Christian was a great friend, a great colleague, but we move on, then it kind of points towards that he's going to stay at Red Bull. If Max is like, I didn't know anything about this, then it points to the fact he might be leaving and going to Mercedes. So, because it could be either way. It could be that the Verstappen camp has been like, we need Christian Horner gone. And now the performance has turned and the second driver situation has all gone even worse than it was before this year. It's a good opportunity to be like, okay, let's side with Verstappen, let's keep him in the team, we'll get rid of Christian. It could also be that they're just trying to clean house completely. Newey's gone. I'm forgetting loads of other people.
Jonathan Wheatley,
yeah. And obviously those two were not ideal to lose at all. And they would have kept them both, I'm sure, if they could have done. But it could be a case of, look, the engine manufacturing is starting. It's about to launch. We may be losing Verstappen. We don't have a second seat at all at the moment, really. Let's just clean house and start from scratch with a new engine. And maybe they're 7th, 8th in the constructors next year, genuinely.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big thing, isn't it? Of, we might well see very quickly kind of a shift between technical designers, everything like that, between VCARB and Red Bull, of course, over the rest of the year as well. Obviously, I know they can move quite freely between those teams anyway. But, genuinely, I think at this point, it's the odd question, isn't it, of how much worse do we reckon Red Bull will be doing this year if they had two VCARBs? I don't think Max would be as close in the championship fight as he is, because of course, as we saw on Saturday at Silverstone, you kind of set that car up in such a way that Max can still fight for wins. But you think, would the amount of points that Max might have potentially lost from a car that probably, he'd still probably... I wouldn't say in the V car, but it would be completely unbelievable to say, he might still have ended up being near the Ferraris or something like that. Could you have potentially made back up more points by having your second driver being competitive in the other car if you had, four V carbs effectively on the grid? Red Bull surely are going to have to completely change the philosophy of how they build a car from the ground up next year. Otherwise, if Max goes, they're screwed. Like, with the car they've got at the moment 100%. And everything else, they are in the bin. Yeah.
Well, without Max, if you doubled Lawson's points and doubled Tsunoda's points for their time in the second seat, they would be last in the championship. They would be last in the constructors. That car is not able to be driven, as far as we've seen, by anyone other than Max Verstappen. And obviously, you haven't had the likes of your Alonso's, Hamilton's, Russell's, or Norris even driving that car. But the caliber of driver...
You put Alonso in, but not Leclerc.
Well, Leclerc's finished now. He finished 14th, didn't he? Obviously, Tsunoda and Lawson are not your top caliber drivers, but they're very decent midfielders, and they can't get a tune out of it at all.
This is the weird thing, isn't it, as well? Like, we talk about this, but you then go, well, Alex Albon, he didn't have a good time in the Red Bull, has kicked on fantastically with Williams.
But again, he is a midfield driver, same as Gasly.
Yeah, but Pierre Gasly, again, is another driver. But I think you give either of those drivers, you put them into a Mercedes or something like that, or a McLaren.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to fight sensibly. They're not going to suddenly be as far back as they were in the Red Bull.
And the problem is, they've committed, Red Bull, really, since 2021, even before that. They've committed to having a one-man team with Max Verstappen, which works if you win the Drivers' Championship, because you've got your marketing ploy, you're keeping your driver satisfied, you've got the best driver on the grid. He doesn't care if you're winning the Constructors or finishing second, third, fourth. What he cares about is winning the Drivers' Championship. And they've done that for the last 4 years, at the cost of your second driver and your team's position in the constructors. If you're running a one-man team but you're not winning the championship, as is looking like very likely to happen this year, your driver's unsatisfied, your team's unsatisfied, and the performance of the car, if the driver leaves, you're therefore in the bin. So genuinely, if they ran 4 V-Carbs this season, Max, I don't think he'd have won 2 races, but he probably would have got a podium or 2 in a V-Carb.
Yeah.
And the second, Tsunoda/Lawson, whoever's driving that second seat, would have done way better. So, would they be worse than 4th in the constructors with 4 V-Carbs? I don't think they would.
No, and that's they might well be that they're a lot further back behind your top 3 teams, and obviously Max might not be happy, but the impression we're getting already is that Max isn't happy anyway, otherwise he wouldn't be having these talks with Mercedes. It's, as I know we said this literally last week on the show as well, but this is just another step towards, are we genuinely watching the Red Bull downfall right now? In front of our eyes?
I think it's very plausible that we are. And we've talked about the long-term issues a few times in this podcast in terms of, this has been happening over the course of nearly 2 years, realistically, since the end of 2023, when long-time managing partner Dietrich Mateschitz died just before the Kota race. And honestly, the Newey leaving... The McLaren becoming the fastest car really from Miami 24 onwards. It's been a downward spiral since then, and the fact Verstappen got his 24 title over the line was mostly down to him rather than the team.
Yeah.
And
I think
I genuinely don't see him staying unless there's a real quick turnaround with Laurent Mekies in charge.
Yeah, and obviously I'm sure we'll talk about this kind of a lot more over the next few weeks as well. But we're heading to Belgium next. Of course, that has often been a really, really good track for Max anyway. But Dietrich Mateschitz, I think he's kind of often forgotten, isn't it? Because he was absolutely ruthless where he needed to be as well. But he was almost a bit of a gentle giant in kind of a weird way. He was very much I think he always came across as very, very fair and kind of measured with the way he ran his teams. But of course, anybody step up and disagree with him, not in even like a dictator kind of shut everybody down, that kind of thing, but just very much of, my way goes with a lot of things.
Yeah,
but
because he was,
but he would always listen. He would always listen to kind of other people's opinions and then make a decision based on
that. And because he was the boss, he was 49% shareholder, you know, people did listen to him and people respected him and people saw him as a great figure at the top of the food chain, really. So, yeah, that has all really been a power vacuum ever since then with, really, it was your Helmut Marko and your Christian Horner were kind of butting heads, weren't they, over the second seat in particular over the winter. Yeah, I think Christian Horner initially won that fight, getting Lawson in, and then very quickly lost when Tsunoda had to be drafted in to replace him. Yeah, it's a big time for the team that has, well, really defined the 21st century Formula One, haven't they?
Yeah, between them and Mercedes, isn't it? It's kind of both of those teams. But, you know, the fact Red Bull have done it as a non-manufacturer
a
up
drinks
until this
company,
point,
yeah,
exactly, is always kind of mind-blowing in its own way as well. I mean, like we said, you know, this might well be we're starting to see the downfall of Red Bull. I mean, the next few races towards the end of this year, honestly, if I was Red Bull now, and it's a very, very difficult conversation to have with Max Verstappen, but the championship this year's done, isn't it? For Max, doesn't sensibly have a shot at the World Championship now. He's over in that regard. And some of that has been his own mistakes. Some of that, of course, has obviously been the team's mistakes as well. But, you know, when he's trying to fight an uphill battle, it was never going to be easy. But, you know, you've just got to put all your eggs surely into next year. It might well be that engine department is in big trouble. It might well be that they're actually looking all right. It might well be they've got no idea what's going on. We just don't know yet, of course, until we get into 2026. And, of course, obviously, no one will, but we're talking all the way through the winter break as well before we get round to that. But it's just a really, really odd turn of events, isn't it? That, you know, the question of, is it tied to Verstappen? Is it just tied to these ongoing allegations? You know, what else kind of are we going to slowly find out, isn't it, Jamie? I think that's the big thing. Yeah.
And the dominoes will begin to fall, I think, as the days go by. So, yeah, I think it certainly isn't good news, is it, that your 20-year CEO is gone. It just adds to the instability surrounding that team. Yeah, it may be that this was the deal with Verstappen camp, that, you know, get rid of Christian and more stay, for instance. But again, it might well be, well, this is another domino in the instability, so I'm off to Mercedes, enjoy George Russell kind of thing. But we'll see.
I mean, the thing is as well, if you're like another high up driver, are we going to end up in a bizarre situation like with Alpine in recent years, where like what should be a top team on paper or a manufacturer, like we saw with Alpine, that actually nobody wants that seat? You know,
possibly.
Does it seem completely unbelievable that we might well end up with like Arvid Lindblad in that car next year?
I would be a bit surprised. I think Isaac Hadjar is certainly one of the drivers. If Verstappen, well, whether Verstappen goes or not, I think Hadjar will be one of the drivers. If Verstappen goes as well, do you probably stick with one of Tsunoda or Lawson? I don't know. It does depend on if the likes of George Russell, even someone like Felipe Drugovich maybe would be sniffing around, Fred Vesti, anyone else in F2 that's doing all right. But yeah, there's still
I love the way you throw Perez. Fred Vesti in like he's been in F2 any time recently.
Well, he came second a couple of years ago, didn't he? And he still
lob Richard Verschoor in.
Yeah, why not
that instead?
Just still a Dutch flag. No need to change the Dutch.
Exactly. Or the first 3 letters.
Yeah, perfect.
First 4 letters, even, I guess. Sorted.
Yeah, I did think briefly we were going to get a return of Franz Tost at VCarve when they announced that Mekis was off.
No, he's out living his life, surely.
Hating Franz Christmas Tost. Still.
Exactly, yeah. Miserable as sin every day. Sure he's loving life.
Exactly. Do we have anything else to add about Christian Horner and the whole Red Bull situation?
I think as we slowly learn more and more, it will be very, very interesting to cover this over the coming weeks, won't it, Jamie? Especially, obviously, you know, we've got a little bit of a break between now and Belgium. I'm sure more and more of this story will slowly unravel as well. But I think, unless you've got anything else to add, Jamie, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody, as always, for listening. We are at 981 subscribers. We are less than 20 away from our goal of 1k. So If you aren't already, please make sure you hit that sub button. Help us get to 1k, and then I'll stop moaning about it in every single episode. As always, Jamie, thank you at very short notice for jumping back on.
Yeah.
We'll try and keep you updated with the stories as they come. But yeah, that's going to do us for this one, and we'll see you very soon for more Knowing Wheel.